Hello, I'm Julian Bright of Informa. We're here at the LTE World Summit in Berlin, and I'm with Paul Steinberg, Chief Wireless Infrastructure Architect at Motorola. Hello, Paul.
Good morning, Julian.
Paul, I think one of your topics that you're presenting here at the conference this week is the issues of cost and capacity relating to LTE. Just how serious an issue is the capacity crunch on mobile operator networks at present?
It's a great question. I think that's been a very resounding theme in the conference, that all the operators with their 3G networks are experiencing a dramatic uptake in capacity on their networks. They're squeezed very hard, and they're having to take steps to grow the capacity of the network, and they're all struggling with how do they manage to accommodate that capacity in a cost-effective way. Extraordinary measures such as last week even, AT&T Wireless announced that they were discontinuing the use of the Sling player on the 3G iPhone to protect bandwidth on their network.
So current technology as HSPA is really not going to cope adequately with the capacity needs of operators going forward.
We think that going forward, that as capacity increases continue to come on, they're going to be increasingly stressed to cost effectively deliver capacity with HSPA. It's a lot of technology that's deployed today. It has some upgrade steps that make sense, but we think LTE is the next logical step that provides that step function in cost performance that the operators are going to need in the future.
Does LTE technology, as it exists today in terms of the performance, meet those needs, or are there still some further developments required to really meet the technical challenges?
That really is the fundamental question that I think everyone is asking, and I think the answer to that question is coming around more conclusively to the answer being yes. We've certainly done a lot of work analyzing the cost performance of the network. Absolutely believe that it brings a lot of the right attributes. We think that the two key attributes on the performance side are the absolute throughput and efficiency of the air interface, significant uptake of efficiency in terms of spectrum utilization of 3 to 4x, we think, relative to HSPA. And then the other piece is cell edge performance, and that was called out yesterday by a number of operators as the absolute metric not being the true speed test, the actual bit rate that an individual user can see, but how much capacity can I push through a sector given a range of users to spread across the spectrum or spread across the sector in different capacities. Then couple that with the operational efficiencies that the network itself brings. It's a flatter, more IP-friendly network that's simpler and easier to deploy with the intelligence pushed down to the edges into the E node B. There are much more green networks to operate now, since the technology that's being invested and brought forward is a step in the hardware architecture. You can see much more power efficiency, much more ease of deployment, different topologies for how the radios are architected. Then finally, there's also the key step function forward in terms of operations and maintenance, the self-organizing network and the increased amount of autonomics that we think dramatically take a lot of the operator's expenses out of operating, deploying, managing, and then optimizing the network.
Yeah. The self-organizing network, that's a term we've heard quite a lot here this week. How much can you actually deliver to operators from day one in terms of that capability, and how much of it will they have to wait for further down the line?
That's also another good question. I think it certainly won't all come on day one. There's a couple of reasons for that. One is it's a big step forward, so there's some technical complexities that we have to work through, and we'll iterate a bit and learn. The other reason is that it's just how much can the operators subsume, how much confidence will they have in that. What we have done is we've gone through a very careful analysis of several operators, their key use cases, around 150 of those use cases that they use to operate their network. And with them, we've categorized them in terms of frequency and also in terms of the absolute cost. Some involve site visits. Those are obviously the more expensive use cases. Yeah. So what we've done is we've prioritized our feature roadmap to try to address those more costly, more frequent use cases up front, and especially those that are associated with deployment and initial optimization of the network. So then as the network matures, we'll see other use cases come on in later phases of the roadmap.
Can those capabilities be extended into the existing network as well as forward to LTE?
I think I've heard various claims on that. One of my competitors was certainly making the comment that they would bring as much back as possible. I think the realities are that it's very intrinsic to the design of the equipment, to the design of the architecture of the network, how much of that will actually be able to be brought back. Some of that is actually part of the standards as well. As you know, the mobiles or the UEs participate in some of the organization of the network and some of the sharing of neighbor lists. So there will be limits into how much of this can be applied to 3G networks.
Okay. And what's happening in the standards bodies as regards self-organizing networks. That work is ongoing, I guess, and you're probably participating in that, I would imagine.
Absolutely, we are. I think one of the key tricks with that is standardization is not complete. I mean, it's been largely driven on the NGMN side. But to the case of trying to support interoperability of the network elements, that the operators certainly need that functionality, there's more work required. There's a different level of IoT testing required. You've got, for the first time, base stations actually communicating with one another to actually affect some of these functions. So some of that has yet to be worked through.
Yeah. Another key concern of operators this week has been the cost aspect. There's a keenness to drive down the cost per bit, and LTE seems to be offering some hope in that area.
Right.
What are your expectations?
What we find is that LTE, for reasons that I mentioned earlier, both on terms of the absolute air interface and how it performs, especially at cell edge sector throughputs, as well as the operational efficiencies, the more capacity you drive on an LTE system relative to HSPA, the better its cost performance starts to look. So when we've modeled this out, both trying to compare this with what some folks in the industry, some analysts have done, as well as our own analysis, we can see approximately, we think, approaching a 5x improvement in cost per bit. A number was thrown out yesterday that the target was 1 gigabyte per euro was the target that they were shooting for. Our analysis says that we're somewhere around that range, not quite that good, but if you apply the appropriate exchange rate to get the dollars to euros, you get very, very close.
Yeah. And what are your expectations in terms of LTE deployment? Will operators deploy it in hotspots initially and then roll out further, or will we see more aggressive rollouts such as Verizon is planning in the US?
Again, I think it depends a bit. Some of the operators have a need for competitive reasons to roll it out more ubiquitously. I think Verizon, is a bit competitively disadvantaged relative to some of the HSDPA technology that they face. Other operators, I think, and the predominant view that I see and I think makes sense, is they will roll it out, as you said, in hotspot coverage areas.
Yeah.
I mean, the typical number that's thrown out is that 80% of the bandwidth on the 3G networks today is consumed by approximately 10% of the users. They talk about laptops and the high data capacity devices driving a significant amount of that. So we think the right thing to do is to deploy it in hotspots in the dense urban areas and then move those power users quickly with dongles off onto the LTE network to relieve the capacity on the 3G network.
And do you see LTE initially as a data-only network, or how important is voice, and at what stage will voice be carried over LTE?
Yeah, this will be Paul's opinion, but I actually think that initially it will certainly be a data-only network. For some operators, we're pushing for voice over IP day one so that they could begin to replace the existing voice network. I actually think voice will be a while in coming. So I think that you'll see that the 2G networks will survive to 2020 and beyond, and that will be the predominant voice network for some time to come. Over time, you'll see voice over IP start to move onto the LTE side, but I think its primary first application is data.
Yeah. Okay, Paul Steinberg, thank you very much.
Thank you.